one of those attended audience member would be somebody who primarily concerns themselves with maintaining compliance and security with the environment. They keep track of the compliance requirements that the company has. Also, they keep track of the compliance as far as governmental agencies may have. So this is who the intended audience for this is going to be, and we're going to speak to you with that base level of understanding, more of your identity management type role here. In this webinar, we are going to talk about what DEC has to offer. So we're going to show you the 4 pillars, if you will, of dynamic access control. Now, after we get finished talking about it, I'm going to open up the floor for some questions if you have anything about dynamic access control. I'm also going to let you know the classes. There is a class from Microsoft that focuses at least a section on dynamic access control, so you can get a little bit more information about that, maybe get some hands-on learning with this product if it's something that would interest you or be useful for your organization. So, first thing first, though, let's talk a little bit about, give you just a little overview of New Horizons, who they are, and then we'll get into the dynamic access control section. New Horizons is, of course, a proven worldwide training provider with flexible learning solutions covering a broad spectrum of topics. We cover everything from the infrastructure piece, the technological or technical aspect of it. We also cover classes covering application levels. So we have a large variety of classes, and that's not the only types of classes we have. Here in the New Horizons for Natural, we also offer classes related to the medical field as well, as far as transcriptioning. So New Horizons is a very dynamic company out here that has a proven track record for providing top-notch training. Now, some facts here. We'll let you take a look at this. Largest international network, around 200 classrooms with 2,400 instructors in 56 countries. I do know from some of our posters that we have here in the Nashville office that we have over a 98% satisfaction rate from our students worldwide. With our trainers, we hire some of the top-notch best trainers that are out there. 3 million students per year are receiving training from New Horizons. And New Horizons is even more flexible now with our instructor or online live virtual delivery. Instead of having an instructor in front of you, you actually can work with the instructor. You can see the instructor. You can talk to the instructor. And completely from the privacy of your office or home without having the hassle of traveling to a center. We still offer the instructor-led training where an instructor can be made available to you. It's a little bit different on the scheduling on those. With the leveraging the online live, we offer more classes, more opportunities for you to take the training that you need. And of course, New Horizons is able to do customizations for your organization, customized classes to meet your needs. You would talk to your sales account manager or your education consultant about those opportunities. And we are a vendor partnership company. We are a Microsoft partner, and also any of the companies that you see listed on this slide here. So Cisco, CompTIA, VMware, Citrix, EC Council, they are all members or all companies that we have partnerships with and provide classes for. So that's a little bit about New Horizons for those of you who may not be familiar with the aspect or familiar with our company and its training regimen. So today what we're going to focus on, and what I'm going to focus on, is going to be with the dynamic access control. So first of all, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at some compliance challenges that we have pre-2012 using our tried and true system, our NTFS permissions that we have with the operating system. Then we're going to talk about the new tool that Microsoft has made available to us through Server 2012 called Dynamic Access Control. and then we'll get into the next steps, what you need to do if you want to learn more about this product, and then I'll answer some of your questions about it at that time. So with compliance, and this may be you may fit into one of these 4 pillars, one of these 4 assignments here in your company, where you're responsible for ensuring confidentiality of your data, high availability of your data, and making sure that the correct people get the access they need. If you're a CSO or a CIO, you need to know if you have the right compliance with governmental and in-house regulations that you have. If you're part of the infrastructure support team, you have questions like not knowing where all the data is and how to control it. That's a big problem with larger companies, is you have different locations. Like for me, I've come from a healthcare background. We had a large number of hospitals underneath my previous company that I worked with as a security analyst for the company, and each hospital, each individual hospital had its own file services, and it had its own file shares for that. And how do I know where all my data is if it's that dispersed? That's an issue that can come up we have with compliance. If you're the content owner, you need to know, is your data protected appropriately? And does it meet the regulations? Does it meet your compliance requirements that are out there? And besides needing to know that, you need to know how to go out and check this to make sure that that is set, that you audit your data that you are the content owner for. If you're an information worker, you just need to know that the data is there, available to you, and in a way that's not going to mess up compliance requirements or regulatory standards for you accessing that data. That's a worry even down to the person who has access and works with it on a daily basis. So these are all things that we concern ourselves with or have issues with a data compliance challenge. Now, I'm sure that there are many tools out there or companies out there that can provide you with ways of looking into this at certain levels, but you may not get all the way down to the content owners and the information worker. It may be something only an infrastructure support role or the CIO would actually have reports generated and availability made to them. With compliance, just face it, it's usually some form of regulation from the government or our industry or our company, and there's several that I've listed here on this slide. You've got HIPAA when we're talking about patient data, patient information. You have Sarbanes-Oxley. If you're working across continents and you're working with other countries, you may have like the European Union Data Protection Directive. Other countries have their own laws regarding the access and use of data gained from work. Even states, certain states have laws dictating who can access data, when they can access data, what they can use the data for, and how they can transmit that data, and how it even has to be stored when it's not being accessed. So these are all things that we have to look at. Microsoft did a case study on this. They looked at not just the requirements out there, but they also broke it down into your storage space. With all the stuff that we have to store, Microsoft found that 45% of file-based storage is being used for just regulatory purposes. The cost is 1.6 GB, we'll just go with the settings here, per month for each managed server. That's a lot of money for that. 70% of the stored data is stale. It's not being accessed. It's being stored there because of regulatory compliance, regulatory reasons say that we have to hold on to it. And this is not even saying what servers it's on. And if you plan on using cloud-based solutions, that can go up to 25 cents per gigabyte per month, GB per month. Also, like I said, distributed information. The data is not always in one data center stored on the file servers we want it to be stored at. Corporate information is everywhere. Despite our best efforts in some cases where we tell users they can't store things on their local computers, on their desktops, or My Documents, what have you, data gets stored there. We have some technologies that allow us to do things like roaming profiles or roaming folders for users. But if we haven't got that technology implemented, the data lives on that workstation. And typically it's not backed up, and whoever gets on that computer may have access to that folder or that file. It's also branch offices, other data centers. In the cloud even, we have data. The MSIT report 1,500 file servers with 110 different groups managing them is what this case study was able to find when it did this search. And that makes it very hard to apply consistency. If it's all on a file server, I can control with NTFS which groups have access and which groups do not, and the level of access they have if they do. But if it's dispersed like this, if I've got things on desktops or in other data centers, I've got to make sure that my NTFS permissions followed, which means I've got to make sure I go and make the same changes wherever that data is located to get that protection that I'm looking for. There's also, of course, the regulatory compliance. There's changes with SOX, HIPAA. Those change sometimes, and we've got to make sure that we follow those changes. Again, the international and local regulations can also dictate in that, and they can also change themselves. And that means that we've got to have more oversight and tighter enforcement. Every time that there is a breach in security, it's almost a reactive thing. The regulations change. They get tighter. They become more costly when we do have a breach. $15 million. That's the settlement for investment banks with SEC over record retention. That is what will happen if you are not meeting your compliance. That's something that could happen on a cost level. Also, data leakage. This number right here, 246 million plus. That's the total number of records containing sensitive personal information that was involved in security breaches in the United States for the past, right now we're up to, what, 9 years, 8 years for sure. That's the data leakage rate, and that number is growing. That was at the time that this information was provided. 246 million records have been breached. Now, that sounds like a line. You're saying, okay, worldwide, yeah, I could probably see that. But then you come down here and you start looking at what Forrester has calculated as the cost of a security breach, and then it starts hitting home. When those security breaches for you start costing you not between $90 and $305 per breach to fix, the impact on your business could be devastating, not just from the fact that you're having to spend the money to repair the leakage and stop it from happening again, but also losing the confidence from your customer base. These are all things Microsoft found in their case study. And that all went into the design phase of dynamic access control. What dynamic access control actually provides me is a safety net. And this is for all file server-based resources. It's not just for one file server at a time like my NTFS permissions would do. They are for all file-based resources. It also provides me with other things. It provides me with the ability to do data classification. I can have this done manually, or I can have this done automatically for me by the system. So I can get a classification of what data I have, what it's used for. I can even go down to security levels on that data. It also gives our IBM departments a central management point for access. Rather than going out and having to have access to all the file servers distributed through my environment, I have a central management point where I can create my rules that affect access to data. With this, because we have this new approach, we also have the ability to audit access attempts. So I know when access has been attempted, when someone has tried to access data that they may not need to have access to, I can get reports on that information. Also, if you're familiar with Active Directory Rights Management Service offered by the Active Directory services on the server systems, RMS can be integrated into dynamic access control and kind of pull the requirements for users to do rights management themselves away from the users and have it automatically done for them. Things like encryption. So if a file is created with certain characteristics to it, RMS will automatically encrypt that file when it's being stored in the storage location. So those are some things that dynamic access control give us as IDM security professionals. Now, why would we want to do this? Well, if you have an inability with what you have right now to achieve the desired security and compliance results. NTFS alone does not give you the abilities that dynamic access control does. And we're going to look at that a little bit more in depth here in just a second. It also is there if you have a requirement to have access control based on attributes rather than just your ACE entries on the ACLs on the files you need access to or folders you need access to. So it gives us other ways of giving that access without totally relying on the NTFS. Now, does it replace NTFS? No. It works in conjunction with NTFS. And that's what we're going to show you over the next few slides. Dynamic access control is built on 4 pillars that it's addressing. It gives you the ability to identify data. As I said, we can allow our users to tag data. We create the tags we want them to use, like let's say highly confidential would be a tag. And the users can go in and tag the documents that they create or use with those tags, saying that this document is considered to be highly confidential. Or for full-time employees only could be a tag. Instead of relying upon the users, the content owners, to tag their data, we also can set up rules at the dynamic access control level that will go out and classify the data for us automatically without having to have a user manually tag each and every file that they're the content owner for. And then we can also have application access based off the tags that have been applied to those files. Dynamic access control also gives us the control access. I have that central access. That's where I create my policies that say you have access based off of these tags and these attributes. It allows me to also have expression-based access conditions, not just rely upon NTFS, read, write, full control. I don't have to worry. I can worry about that, but I also have this safety net, if you will, that can be used to protect me even further by using things like, that we call claims. Claims we'll talk about in just a second what they are, but I can do it for the user or a device, which is another thing NTFS doesn't necessarily give me, is the device ability to look at access based off the device you're coming in off of. Also, control access gives me effective access, and it also allows me to go in and give the users a better, if you will, access denied assistance message. Give them a message that is easier for them to understand, maybe even explain why the access is not allowed. That's another pillar. Audit access, knowing what files have been accessed, what attempts have been made. And I can do that from my central audit policy. I can go in my central tool with dynamic access control, create my audit policies. Because Server 2012 has a, and Server 2008 R2 have the global audit systems that we can set through a group policy, this leverages that to allow me to apply audit access at the file level without having to access every file server and make those decisions at the server level. This gives me a little bit more control, more centralized here. Also, protection of your data. Like I said, it can integrate in with RMS to provide automatic protection of Office documents. With the file tag on there, let's say going back to my highly confidential tag I talked about in identifying data, I can have RMS look at whenever a file is created with that and saved. Then what will happen is that it will go out and it will maybe encrypt the file wherever it is stored. That is near real-time protection. As soon as the file is tagged, RMS is alerted. Now it says near real-time. There's a little lag there, a few seconds in the creation of the file from the time that RMS is aware of it and does its work, but it is near real-time. And this can also extend out for non-Office RMS systems. It's not just for Office. It's other RMS-enabled applications as well. So in a nutshell, this is what Dynamic Access does. It allows me to classify my documents using resource properties from Active Directory. It also allows me to automatically classify based off the content inside the document itself. In their expression-based auditing, I can target access auditing based on the classification and the user who's accessing the file. And I can do a centralized deployment of this with the global audit policy from group policy. It does allow me to have expression-based access. So it's a little bit more flexible than just saying based off who you are, what group you're a member of. I can get a little bit more fine control about how you get access or who gets access to a file. And it's centralized control. I have a central access policy set up that I can go into, and I can create these policies and control all of my file servers from inside of this location, all my file access. And again, the encryption, automatic RMS encryption based off the classification that was placed on that file. Now, let's start talking about how we're doing it currently or pre-Server 2012. You have your NTFS permissions. How do we get access with NTFS? Well, it looks at your security token that was given to you by Active Directory when your user account signed in. So when you authenticate to your domain controller would turn around and give you a SID for your user account, shows what that is, and then it would take the SIDs of all the groups you're a member of and attach that to your token. So your token is your SID and all the SIDs you're a member of. When you try to access a share or a file that's protected, what would happen? You would present, your system presents that token. The token checks its access control list, looks at all the entries that are on there, and matches up. First it looks for your denies, if there's any denies on here to deny you access, and then it starts looking for your allows. And once it's finds a group or your SID listed there, that's the access that you get. Now, one thing that was a downside of NTFS, sort of, is that if I did make a change to somebody's security group membership in Active Directory, they would have to log out of their computer and log back on so that they would get those new SIDs assigned to them because your security token is created at logon. That was one downside. Now, we may create our groups based off of like attributes or things that we're looking for. Like if I have a sales department and I have a sales share, I may go in and I may create a group called sales, a security group, and give them access to that folder. That's what we call a shadow group. We're mimicking the department title for that group. So shadow groups are the way that we typically mimic those attributes. And security groups have rules on who can be members of which types of groups. If you remember, you have your rules about what universal groups can control, what domain local groups can have inside them, what global groups can have inside of them. So there is some control there, some rules that we have to face. Not a huge issue, but it is something we have to look at. Some of the downsides of NTFS with this is it doesn't cross trust boundaries. I can have my trust set up, but anything outside my boundaries, it doesn't flow to. My Active Directory trusts or my NTFS permissions, they're done. And also, there's no way to make an access decision based off the user's device. Yes, we can say that computers have access to a resource, but we can't look at both the user and the computer and look at the access options. That is what NTFS has as a weakness. So now with Server 2012 and Dynamic Access Control, we gain the expression-based access. What we do is when we set this up, we decide attributes from Active Directory that we want to use. And when we select them, we're telling Active Directory that when you create that security token and you put those SIDs together, the user SID and all the groups they're a member of, I also want you to tattoo in these attributes from that user as well into that security token. And that could be something like the department or the employee type. You select which attributes you want. Then what we do is we use what are called claims. The claims are nothing more than an identifier for your account, your user. Those claims can be included directly in the file share permissions. The claims can be used consistently on all users in the forest. We don't have to change it. This claims can be used across everybody. Big reason, if you go back to your knowledge of Active Directory, the schema of Active Directory is shared by all domain controllers in the forest. And therefore, anything I do to the schema in one domain is replicated to all the others. So when I go in and I change the rules and say that the security tokens need to have these attributes, that extends out to every domain in the forest, thus every user in the forest. If you have a trust boundary you need to go across between two companies, you can take your claims from your company and match them up to what the other trust boundary is. So we transform them across the trust boundary. So whatever I dictate in one, it will be transformed and made into the attribute needed on the other side of the trust boundary. And it enables new policy types that NTFS alone cannot give you. We mentioned those limitations here. Here's a great example. We're still using NTFS. NTFS on a folder share or a file share says write access is given to the members of the finance group. Great, that's that first part of that slide right there. Allow write if user.member of is finance. So we look at the user count. Do they have the SID for the finance group? Give them write access if they do. But I can take this further with expression-based because now I can also look at other attributes. This other attribute is an and the user's employee type is FTE, meaning full-time employee in a lot of cases. And the device .managed is true. So what that really says is give this person write access to this folder or this file if they're a member of finance. That's NTFS right there. But then adding on, then we go even further. We say what's their employee type. If they're a contractor and it's marked as contractor as the employee type, they don't get in. Because this would sit on top of NTFS or sit underneath it and be that safety net we were talking about where it catches this. And that is what that first part does. And the second part says device.manage equals true. That means it looks and says what device is that user using to try to access this file? Is it a workstation or a device that we have in Active Directory? And if it's not, we're not going to allow you to have access. So now I've controlled it to where you have to be a member of finance, you have to be a full-time employee, and you have to be using a computer that we manage. That is what expression-based access does. It does not replace NTFS. It enhances. It is your safety net underneath NTFS. This is great for when we have issues with what is called permission creep. You may have heard this term before. Permission creep is when somebody joins the company in one role and over the course of their career with the company change their role or have new roles assigned to them, get promotions, things along those lines happen to them, and for some reason, somehow, some way, the controls, the access that they got from each role is not adequately removed from them when they change their departments or change their roles in the company. If you have your Active Directory environment set up properly, Then when a person changes their role in the company and their department field maybe changes or their title changes, we can use those types of attributes to determine access to a file. And therefore, even though their group membership or their SID, their user SID, gives them access to a file or folder, this lives underneath it and does a final check. That is a beauty of expression-based access. Also, it gives us data classification. Remember I said users can tag files and put these tags on them stating what the file is, whether it's confidential or free knowledge or highly secret, top secret, what have you. They can do that. We can also have an infrastructure set up with dynamic access control that uses a classification rule that will go out and will scan the files at a schedule that we set and classify them based off of a rule. So some examples of that is it will look at any file that contains the string SBC confidential. And once it finds any file on that file share that has that, it will assign a high business impact tag or a tag called high on that file. Or classify any file that has at least 10 social security numbers as having personally identifiable information inside of it. And we put a tag on there that says PI possibly, or personally identifiable information. And we can also go in and also set another tag that makes that highly confidential. And this can be an automated process without having to have user interaction to do that. So that gives us our classification level with dynamic access control. We also have encryption, as I mentioned. You know, our challenge is how do I protect sensitive information after it leaves your environment? And also a big thing is sometimes we can't get the end users who are creating this data to encrypt that for us. We ask them to do it, but a lot of times, either because they're not sure how to do it, they don't remember how to do it, they're busy and can't remember to do it, we miss some things and we have files that should be encrypted by either a corporate mandate or a governmental mandate that are not being encrypted. So dynamic access control goes with that. It will encrypt the file. It uses the claims definitions, the file property definitions. It uses access policies that we've set up on our domain controllers as the initial step. And then it's going to go out there, and let's just say in this example, the user creates a file with the word confidential in the text and saves it. So the classification engine would then go out at its scheduled time. It finds this file with the word confidential inside of it. We've set it up and puts a tag of high impact on top of it, saying that this is a highly secretive file or something that we need to control. So now we get the tagging on there. Then the file server will then go through there and run a rule against RMS and says, find me all the files that are classified as high impact. Once it finds all of them, it then goes, are they encrypted? If they're not encrypted, then the RMS system will come out and encrypt it based off of a template that we've created as administrators at the RMS level. So even if the user forgets to tag the file and encrypt it, the system, the dynamic access control system, if we have a rule for it, will find it, tag it, and encrypt it for us. That is a system dynamic access control leverages and makes available to us as IDM or security management professionals. So as you can see, dynamic access control meets a lot of our requirements. One thing that we didn't get too far into here was the auditing needs, where I need to know who accessed what. We can go in with our auditing system, even with our tags. And once we have a tag on a file, which is a lot of what dynamic access control looks at, is tagging. You got to make sure we have our tags first. Then we can start using our rules. But with the auditing, I can create a rule, an auditing rule that says, I want you to tell me file access to the HR classified.doc file that is shared. Only though, I only want the audit if the person accessing or attempting to access that file department attribute is not HR. That could be a rule that I create. So now HR people, I'm not going to get a lot of auditing logs when those HR people access those files, but I will get an audit of when somebody in sales or in manufacturing or research or whatever try to access that file. And then I can see what happened. Did they get in? Did they not get in? I can use it, let's say I'm in a geographically dispersed company, and I want to know when people try to access a file share from another state, possibly, or another country, and they try to access that file. So I can look at the attribute as to what their state code is or their country code is, if that's available to me in Active Directory. And I can also go in there and say only specific types of files with these specific tags do I want to get the auditing on. So it's not just I had set it on one level and I get all auditing for everything that goes on. I get what I want and only what I want and only what I've asked for. And normal activity I'm not going to see. Now, there could be a situation where you might be saying that normal activity we might need to audit, and we can. We can always set it up. We can always modify our auditing rules. But dynamic access control makes it centralized. I don't have to go to each file share and file server and set it up. Beauty of dynamic access control. Now, you're probably wondering, if you've sat through this, how do I enable this? Well, there are ways to do that, and we will show you how to do that. I'll be glad to show you how to do that. There is a class available from Microsoft, Microsoft Class 2412. This is part of their NCSA approach to getting your certification, so it goes towards the certification as well. It is called Configuring Advanced Windows Server 2012 Services. And we'll go in, and dynamic access control is explained. We have labs for it. You get hands-on work with it. You get more detailed information about what claims are created, how they're created, and how to work with them in a 2012 environment. Now, if you need to get into this class or want more information, I would suggest talking to an education consultant from New Horizons. They'll be glad to contact you. With our classes, we always ask at the end of the class for feedback. We always have a satisfaction form, basically, a how did we do form. And it's broken down based off the information provided by Microsoft, the technology provided in the class, and your instructor level. And let me tell you, as instructors, we really read that information. We really take it to heart, and we really use that to make ourselves better, which is one reason I feel like that New Horizons instructors are some of the best that you can find, because we do follow that feedback. We do get better. We do take things that we've learned from other classes and use them later on in other classes. We're always looking to get better. All right, so we are at 11:40 Central Time, about 40 minutes into our 45-minute schedule. So what I'm going to do for this last 4 minutes or so, I'm going to open up the floor for any questions. If you have any questions, go ahead and let us see them. Anybody? All right. Not seeing too many questions here, so maybe I've answered all your questions about what dynamic access control is and what you can use it for in your environment, how it's going to help you in your environment with your security, access, and compliance concerns. So I want to thank every one of you for taking time out of your day to actually come here and listen to me about this. Again, my name is Jason Kittrell. I'm a regional instructor for New Horizons. I may be the instructor who will be teaching this class. If you decide to take the class here and you see that I'm your instructor, please feel free to let me know. If you like this webinar, if you have any questions, if you'd like to reach out to me, your account executive can reach out to me and we'll send me emails or any questions that you may have later on after you've had a chance to digest this information. I'll be glad to get back in touch with you as quick as I possibly can. So if there's no questions, I believe we're pretty much here at the end of the webinar.
And also, just as a heads up for everyone, we will be posting this on YouTube, and the slide deck will also be up on SlideShare for your use.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much for attending. I'm going to turn the what's left of the class or the webinar period over to the New Horizons staff here, and thank you very much for listening.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and hope you're all doing well, and have a great day.